In the name of Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, I bear witness that he raised up one from among us in Georgia by the name of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the exalted Christ. And I therefore will also like to bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is divine warner teacher in our midst, and I would like to greet you, the viewers, with the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. This video, titled "The COINTELPRO Invented Black on Black Crime, the War Against a Black Messiah, FBI Files," and it is to expose the hidden hand in black disputes. We want to expose the hand behind black disputes among black leadership. Okay? And I want to take you back. And I want us to go down memory lane and reminisce about our dear brothers W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. It goes all the way back then that J. Edgar Hoover and the Alphabet Boys had a hand in disrupting that black Pan-Africanist movement. Okay? And not only did he use W.E.B. Du Bois to go at one another, but Marcus Garvey and Noble Drew Ali didn't necessarily see eye to eye. Okay? But the enemy played on those disputes between those three giants among our people.
Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican-born idealist who suggested African Americans move back to Africa. And W.E.B. Du Bois, a realist who believed black freedom lay on American soil. Debate throughout history is vital because it challenges the debaters to come up with new ideas and improve upon old ones. In the debate between Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois, their debate was a failure for the cause of African American freedom because they focused their efforts on personal conflicts as opposed to the situation at hand. Personal debate between Garvey and Du Bois diminished their ability to focus on the freedom of African Americans. They should have been more concerned about the more monumental topic at hand, which was the empowering of black folks. However, what they really seemed to be focused on was egotistical pride.
Another dispute that the enemy seized upon like a predator on his prey was against a couple of more of our great giants by the names of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and our dear beloved brother, Minister Malcolm X. These were another two great giants that were used and pitted against one another to create confusion and disruption in the black civil rights movement.
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the Bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attack of the Klan in that
Well,
day.
I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force. But I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful direct action. Now, this is what I tried to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and non-violent resistance. Non-resistance leaves you in a state of stagnant passivity and deadened complacency, wherein non-violent resistance means that you do resist in a very strong and determined manner. And I think some of the criticisms of nonviolence, or some of the critics, fail to realize that we are talking about something very strong, and they confuse non-resistance with.
And we have the FBI documents. We have the FBI files. Assalamu alaikum, family. This is your brother Malcolm Flex again. And I just wanted to expose how the FBI and COINTEL operated. So I have the actual FBI documents on a PDF, and I'm just going to read some of it just to show you how they operate and show you their dirty tactics and how they use them against the black community. So as we read, you see COINTELPRO, FBI domestic intelligence activities. COINTELPRO Revisited, Spying and Disruption by Brian Glick. Okay, right here you have the introduction, okay, of the COINTELPRO right here. All right, that you can pull this stuff up yourself online. You can even Google it, family. But I just want to show you all how the COINTELPRO worked. It right here show you what was COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was the FBI's secret program to undermine the popular upsurge which swept the country during the 1960s. Through the name stands for Counterintelligence Program. The targets were not enemy spies. The FBI set out to eliminate radical political opposition inside the U.S. Okay? When traditional modes of repression, exposure, blatant harassment, and prosecution for political crimes failed to counter the growing insurgency and even help to fuel it, the Bureau took the law into its own hands and secretly used fraud and forced to sabotage constitutionally protected political activity. Its methods ranged far beyond surveillance and amounted to a domestic version of the covert action for which the CIA has become infamous throughout the world. Okay, then right below you have how do we know about it, and then how did it work? But that's the part I want to kind of focus on. It says, the FBI secretly instructed its field officers to propose schemes to misdirect, discredit, disrupt, and otherwise neutralize specific individuals and groups. Close coordination with local police and prosecutors was encouraged. Final authority rested with top FBI officials in Washington, who demanded assurance that there is no possibility of embarrassment to the Bureau. More than 2,000 individual actions were officially approved. The documents reveal 3 types of methods used by the FBI, family. Number 1, infiltration. Agents and informers did not merely spy on political activists. Their main function was to discredit and disrupt. Various means to this end are analyzed below. Other forms of deception, the FBI and police also wage psychological warfare from the outside through bogus publications, forged correspondence, like I read that was sent to Dr. Martin Luther King, and anonymous letters and telephone calls and similar forms of deceit. Okay? So the COINTELPRO and the CIA, these are the inventors of black on black crime. I'm reading it to you right here. The forms that and tactics that they use. It says, the FBI and police also wage psychological warfare from the outside through bogus publications, forged correspondence, anonymous letters, and telephone calls and similar forms of deceit. Number 3, harassment, intimidation, and violence, eviction, job loss, break-ins, vandalism, grand jury subpoenas, false arrests, frame-ups, and physical violence were threatened, instigated, or directly employed in an effort to frighten activists and disrupt their movements. Government agents neither concealed their involvement or fabricated a legal pretext. In the case of the Black and Native American movements, these assaults, including outright political assassinations, were so extensive and vicious that they amounted to terrorism on the part of the government. Okay? And right here, it has who were the main targets. It shows you all the people that they targeted, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., David Dellinger, Philip Berrigan, and other leading pacifists were high on the list, like Malcolm X and Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, etc., etc. Family, all you have to do is your research. Anytime that there's black leadership, giants among us, the enemy is working overtime to create dissension between the two. Like the Black Panther Party and the Up movement. The enemy sent out anonymous letters to have both organizations going at one another. Like with our dear brother Dr. Martin Luther King, they sent him anonymous letters encouraging him to commit suicide. Assalamu alaikum. This is your brother Malcolm Flex. And I just wanted to quickly go over this letter, this anonymous letter that was wrote to our dear brother Martin Luther King Jr. And this is in the FBI files, okay? We have reason to believe that the FBI sent this anonymous letter to our dear and late and great brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it reads, King, look into your heart. You know you are a complete fraud and a great liability to all of us Negroes. White people in this country have enough frauds of their own, but I am sure that they don't have one at this time that is anywhere near your equal. You are no clergyman, and you know it. I repeat, you are a colossal fraud and an evil, vicious one at that. King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do. This exact number has been selected for a specific reason. It has definite practical significance. You are done. There is only but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nations. Meaning that the brother should commit suicide. That's what they were urging the brother do, was to commit suicide before he is assassinated. So just to go and show and prove to you all that the enemy is not above sending out anonymous letters to various leadership in black organizations. And there were anonymous letters sent out to many different black groups, anonymous telephone calls sent to leaders of these black groups. And today we intend to prove it. Among other giants in our community that was used to create dissension, our dear brother Jesse Jackson and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. When our dear brother Jesse, he took some money and just kind of, but we're not going to criticize and condemn our brother, but we just going to tell it like it is. There's even a more up-to-date event taking place in media right now among black leadership in sports, which is a prime example of how the elite, the enemy, the ones who rule in spiritual wickedness in high places, the same type of tactics that they used back then, they are using today, even in sports. When you look at the Colin Kaepernick and Malcolm Jenkins, Eric Reed situation, when you had three brothers who were taking the knee during these football games, and they were standing for a cause on behalf of black people. But instead of highlighting why they were protesting, what they did was they offered the brothers and the Players Association a certain amount of money, but the brothers, Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed, didn't want to accept the deal that they were offering. But you have a brother like Malcolm Jenkins who was trying to influence and encourage brothers to take that route. But the brothers declined, so brother Malcolm Jenkins said, to hell with the movement, I'm going to go this way against the grain.
Chance to talk to you since Josh Norman's comments. What did you make of those, and just your reaction?
I didn't watch his comments, but I assume they're about Malcolm. I can give some more clarity to why I believe he's a sellout if y'all got a minute to hear a story.
Sure.
Y'all remember that players' owners meeting in New York City? So we were brought in under the premise that the NFL wanted to use their resources to help the black community. We established within the first 5 minutes of that meeting that we weren't there to negotiate an end to the protest. After about an hour and a half of talking, Bob McNair says, "I think the elephant in the room is this protesting." Terry Pagula follows up with, "Yeah, I've already lost 2 sponsors for my hockey team. We need to put a Band-Aid on this, and we need a black figurehead to do it." What's the Eagles owner's name? Lurie. Lurie says, "We can do more for the black community than you can ever imagine with our resources." Bob McNair then says, "Yeah, just make sure you tell your comrades to stop that protesting business." So we leave that meeting. We reestablished internally, the people that are involved with the Players Coalition, that we weren't negotiating an end to the protest. The NFL said they wanted to use its resources to help the black community, so I was fine with giving my opinion on how they could do that. That changed the last week of November when Malcolm called me on the phone and asked if the NFL made a donation to the Players Coalition, would that be enough for me to stop protesting? He said that they were willing to do $5 million. And I told him, no, we've already established for 2 times prior to this that we weren't negotiating an end to the protest. He then asked me, well, how much would it take? So I ended that conversation. I reported back to other players what he said to me, and at that point we removed ourselves from the player coalition. That weekend, Malcolm stopped protesting. He said that it was time for everybody to stop protesting. He didn't protest the rest of the year. The following May, the NFL and the Players Coalition finalized and announced their deal, and within 24 hours of that, the NFL changed the policy on the national anthem, requiring everybody to stand. So those series of events are not a coincidence. The NFL used him to change the anthem policy to force it into the protest to satisfy its sponsors, like Terry Pegula mentioned, and probably also to satisfy the President of the United States. We spent weeks on the phone talking about this deal and saying that it wasn't an end to the protest. And he made the decision on his own to move forward and essentially allow the NFL to hide behind his black face, as Terry Pegula said, to make a change to the anthem policy to force us to stand. When I was involved with it, it was set up much like a player contract, heavily incentivized. It was unsustainable. There's no way that we would achieve the goal of reaching the maximum $89 million. First, they said that they would cut funding to breast cancer awareness and Salute to Service. I said that's a terrible idea. Why would we undercut other worthy programs? Then they wanted to make it a matching program, so owners of the teams would only match what was donated by players. So if I put $1 in, owners would put $1 in. So the only way we get $89 million is if players donate $89 million. Well, I said, okay, I'm in San Francisco. I'm in Silicon Valley. I should be able to go to Facebook. I should be able to go to Google and fundraise. Nope, you can't do that. It has to come from the player's pocket. Then they took it a step further and capped that number at $5,000. So not only could I not fundraise, I can only invest $5,000. So basically, to get that maximum number, every single person in the locker room would have to donate $5,000. It just wasn't happening. It was unsustainable. It never be reached. And the last component was 90% of the funds had to be invested by players to make the next year viable. So if one team across the league doesn't invest 90% of what needed to be raised, the next year wasn't happening. That's what it was when I was involved in it. I removed myself. Who knows what it is now? You'd have to ask them.
So effectively, you say basically the NFL paid players off not to protest.
Well, that's, when I say neocolonialism, that's what I mean. It's funny, Terry Pegula said black figurehead, and that's literally the definition. When you use a black figurehead to push a white agenda and then hide behind that black figurehead to get your agenda accomplished.
It's a little more mundane topic, but your thoughts on you getting fined last week and Zach Ertz not?
That's interesting. What am I supposed to do? He charged me. I'm just protecting myself. I don't know what to say if they don't like the way I protected myself. I'm supposed to stand there and wait for him to do something?
Have you gotten much resistance from the league office, or have you heard anything from them?
About?
Well, the fine obviously is one thing. Do you feel like you're getting slighted by those guys?
It's interesting. I got fined, got an interception overturned. We'll see how this appeal hearing goes next week.
So you are appealing?
I am.
Eric, you got to spend a little time with Chancellor before the game. What was that like, and why was it important for you to go over there and say hello to him?
So now what they're doing is they're trying to distract us of what the original purpose and intent for this movement into a SmackDown wrestling match symbolically between three brothers, three black men. So they trying to take the attention away from police brutality and highlight three black men bumping heads with one another. See? And this is what the enemy tries to do. He tries to take our pain and our suffering and turn it to a reality TV show drama. So family, we have to be smarter than this. We have to be more intelligent, okay? Because you got certain brothers and individuals in our community who wants to stand up and speak out against another organization, which is fine, which is okay. But we can't be naive and so gullible to think that the enemy won't use that to disrupt whatever progress that we have going on in the black community. Here, this is your brother Malcolm Flex, and I just wanted to read these quick points, guidelines for coping with other forms of deception. 1. Don't add unnecessarily to the pool of information that government agents use to divide political groups and turn activists against each other. They thrive on gossip about personal tensions, rivalries, and disagreements. The more these are aired in public or via telephone, which can be tapped, or mail, which can be opened, the easier it is to exploit a group's problems and subvert its work. Note that the CIA has the technology to read mail without opening it, and that the telephone network can now be programmed to record any conversation in which specified political terms are used. The best way to reduce tensions and hostilities and the urge to gossip about them is to make time for open, honest discussion and resolution of personal as well as political issues. 3, don't accept everything you hear or read. Check with the supposed source of the information before you act on it. Personal communication among estranged activists, however difficult or painful, could have countered many FBI operations which proved effective in the 60s. 4, when you hear a negative, confusing, or potentially harmful rumor, don't pass it on. Instead, discuss it with a trusted friend or with the people in your group who are responsible for dealing with covert intervention. 5, verify and double check all arrangements for housing, transportation, meeting rooms, and so forth. 6, when you discover bogus materials, false media stories, etc., publicly disavow them and expose the true source insofar as you can. Okay, and I'm showing you through all the actual documents.
There had been a systematic effort by the FBI in Chicago and nationally to destroy the Panthers. Previously, the FBI in Chicago had sent a letter to the head of the El Rukns, Jeff Fort, telling him the Panthers were trying to assassinate him. Didn't he want to take some action to prevent that? They had deliberately attempted to provoke things between the Panthers and other groups and attempted to discredit the Panthers publicly.
And tactics that the enemy used against black people in our community. Who do you think exacerbated the tensions between Crips and Bloods? Because when these organizations first started out, they were for rebuilding the black community, protecting the black community, because these are the brainchilds or the babies of the Black Panther Party, and the Black Panther Party is the brainchild or the baby of the Nation of Islam. So they have taken the gangs, the Crips and the Bloods, from its true purpose. And they created the division between both factions and then sensationalized it. They created the narrative for us. So those of us who are considered in the black conscious community, today we must end the spiritual gang banging. The spiritual gang banging. Why? Because we look like hypocrites in the eyes and the faces of our people who don't consider themselves in the black conscious community, but we know from experience that our people has a high level of intelligence. So when they see us banging on one another, they are looking at us like we are hypocrites that we are if we are willing to participate in that type of negative activity. Am I right or wrong? So how can we, the so-called black conscious people, be the example of a dead people out there who are wandering about in darkness? How do we guide our people back to the light of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and truth, and life, love, justice, and happiness? How do we guide them back to a lifestyle away from a death style if we, the beacons of light, the watchmen, are spiritual gang banging against one another? We doing spiritual drive-bys against one another. When will we close ranks? When will we not allow a slinking devil? And I'm not just talking about that white man on the outside, but I'm talking about that slinking devil that's on the inside. When will we stop listening to the whispering of that slinking devil within self? When will we learn and begin to have the discipline to keep our mouths shut? Okay? Hands off one another. We spend more time banging on one another beliefs and religions and lifestyles than we do banging on this real beast, which is called white supremacy. When will we bang on the real enemy? Those who run our communities, those who patrol our communities, those who set up businesses in our communities and don't give anything back. Those who oppose high interest rates on us. Those who will not give us loans to run a business. Those who keep us in the welfare mentality. Those who use our organs to keep themselves alive. Those who continue to tax our people in our communities knowing that we are already in poverty. Those who continue to exploit our communities. When will we bang on that enemy? When will we do an expose on that enemy? If we say that we really care about black and brown people, when will we stand up? When will we stop using our ancestors and our great leaders' name in vain? When will we become that child of destiny, of redemption, the child whom our ancestors prayed for to redeem a lost and found people here in the hells and wilderness of North America? When will we become that people? Will we allow ourselves to go down in the annals of history and be failures, and we fail future generations that are coming after us? Or will we be the change? Will we be the real revolutionaries? Will we be the ones who break the cycle? Because there's a vicious cycle that needs to be broken. But the only way for us to break it is through our unity, not our disunity. Even if we have a disdain towards one another, we should always handle our private beefs in private and not in the public. Because if we handle it in private, then the enemy cannot use it against us. We have to stop taking sides with the enemy when he puts up unfavorable 30-second sound bites on his TV screen. We have to stop taking what the enemy said and using it against one another. And we have to quit calling each other criminal organizations without any proof or any evidence. Because to be truthfully honest, when we spiritually gangbanging against one another, we are committing treason. And I mean us as a whole. We all are committing treason to our community because we are doing our community a disservice. So I ask those who have the ability to reason with me. I ask those who have the ability to understand what I'm saying to come and not just join on to the NOI, but join on to the real movement, join on to the real struggle that our ancestors have fought and died for. Anybody who could not be turned against other black people, they killed and murdered them. Just look at the history. Brother Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, you know what I'm saying? And the list goes on and on. Because the enemy said that they must prevent the rise of a Messiah who's coming out of the black community.
They didn't have to kill every leader. All they had to do was kill one of the most important and up-and-coming and messianic leaders who was doing what Fred Hampton was doing, to send the message to all those young folks, whether they be black or white or Latin or whatever, who wanted to get involved in the struggle, that these are this is the game that you're getting involved in. We'll kill you in your bed.
I think during different periods the government uses different tactics, you know, and sometimes their methods will be to publicly discredit groups, to jail people. We saw that sometimes with regard to the Wobblies, they actually did kill people. We saw with regard to the Communist Party, they frequently would jail people or attempt to ruin their reputations. I think with regard to the black movement in particular, the escalation of the government's attacks was very clear. And I think assassination, setting people up for internecine rivalries which could lead to deaths, I think the government has shown a willingness to use any form of violence that it felt was necessary.
So, dear family, here's another Airtel message. That's another FBI document called the Counterintelligence Program Black Nationalist Hate Groups. And it talks about, and it has a list of goals on its agenda. Okay? It has a list of goals on its agenda. So let me read some of this. Okay, at the top you have nationalist activity and interested in counterintelligence to coordinate this program. This agent will be responsible for the periodic progress letters being requested, but each agent working in this type of case should participate in the formulation of the counterintelligence operations goals for maximum effectiveness of the counterintelligence program and to prevent wasted effort. Long-range goals are being, etc. Number one, prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups. In unity, there is strength, a truism that is no less valid for all its triteness. An effective coalition of black nationalist groups might be the first step toward a real Mau in America, the beginning of a true black revolution. Number two, prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. He is the martyr of the movement today because they murdered the brother. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspire to this position. I'm going to repeat that again. Number 2, prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah, but he is the martyr of the movement today. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspire to this position. Elijah Muhammad is less of a threat because of his age. It says Elijah Muhammad was less of a threat because of his age. And that's how the enemy was deceived in believing that this man couldn't possibly be the Messiah because they felt that he was too old. But he can never be too old. And Elijah Muhammad is still alive and well with Allah God. In the presence of Allah God, they thought they killed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he escaped an assassination attempt. But let me continue to keep reading. It says King could be a very well contender for this position should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrines, in parentheses nonviolence, and embrace black nationalism. Carmichael has the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way. So they are saying that if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had continued to keep his white liberal doctrine, that they wouldn't have bothered him. But as soon as the brother met and sat down with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and if you listen to his last few lectures before the brother was assassinated, his speeches began to change, and the brother said in one interview that I believe that my dream have turned into a nightmare, and I believe that I have integrated my people into a burning house. So go back and do the research and check on it if you don't believe me, family. J. Edgar Hoover was a 33-degree Freemason and Shriner. So he knew that the black man and woman here in the hills and wilderness of North America was the Hiram Abiff that will be resurrected and raised up by the master Solomon, the one who possesses the master grip or the lion's paw, will come and raise up a dead man or a dead people who was buried in a shallow grave of ignorance. So you, black man and woman, are that Hiram Abiff that story is talking about in Freemasonry. And J. Edgar Hoover, he didn't give a damn about us wanting to separate or control America. He cared about us separating and controlling the social order. The social order. He wanted white people to remain on top and black people to remain at the bottom. That's what you call white supremacy. So they was afraid of a man like Dr. Martin Luther King once he would turn to black nationalism. Because that man called on 1 million men. The first 1 million man march. But they loved him when he was teaching white liberal views. But as soon as the man sat down with the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, his lectures and his speeches before he was assassinated began to change. And he also did an interview where he said that he believed that his dream turned into a nightmare, and that he also believed that he had integrated his people into a burning house. And then they assassinated a man who was preaching nonviolence. So they don't care how you come. If you come nonviolent or violent, this enemy will take you out. He don't care if you a Muslim. He don't care if you a Christian, if you a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Jew. The enemy don't care what you is. If you black, he gonna take you out. So let's just keep it 100. So who is our common enemy? Let's focus on the common enemy and let's quit focusing on one another. Because there's a big field that awaits the wide awake man to work out in. There's a big field in front of the wide awake man. So to the black conscious community, if you're wide awake, and I consider myself wide awake, family, why are you focused on me and attacking me when you got a big old field in front of you? And I got a big old field in front of me to work out in. So let's work out in this field together, family. You know, and let's quit talking religion and metaphysics and politics and all that until we achieve real freedom and liberation. And then we could talk all that stuff. But for now, let's focus on getting our people and separating, having our own. Okay? Like the minister said, separation to death. You know what I'm saying? In our plan, what the Muslims want and what the Muslims believe. We want a full and complete separation from the enemy. We want 8 to 10 states to call our own. And once we achieve this, family, and we get arable land to call our own, then we can settle our petty differences. But you don't send no soldiers out in the battlefield and they fighting against their enemy and then all of a sudden they turn around fighting one another. You know what I'm saying? You don't see brothers on the basketball court or on the football field. They got to play against the opponent and then all of a sudden they playing against one another. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So, dear family, I hope you appreciated, you know what I'm saying, this video and some of the documents that I'm presenting to you and letting you know that black people, we didn't invent black on black crime. COINTELPRO, CIA, and FBI invented black on black crime. Okay? They have a war against a black messiah. I just showed it to you. You know what I'm saying? And it stands to this day. So we have to make intelligent decisions, you know what I'm saying, actions, and how we conduct ourselves in front of our people. So with that, dear family, I would like to greet you all as I came with the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum.